All right, so the second part is that I'd like to talk about the discrimination that faces Palestinians in terms of land and housing and areas that Palestinians in Israel can live. So let's break it down into the different areas that are in Israel, and that way we will be able to really understand what is going on. So let's talk about the cities that are predominantly and majority, if not completely, Israeli Jewish. There's a city in Israel called Afula. There were several Palestinian citizens of Israel who won the lottery for subsidized housing because there are these different schemes given by the government because the prices are so expensive. And when the residents of Afula in the city heard about the fact that Palestinians had won this lottery scheme and would be moving into the city, the people went out to protest against the Palestinians moving into the city, and also legally, where I guess this is a bit of an overlap between housing and legal, there are something called reception committees, or in Hebrew it's called Va'adot Kabbalah, where legally there is a reception committee of the specific city, and they can get together and say that we can reject this group of people who is joining the city because it's going to damage the character of the city. And in other words, what it's saying is we don't want Palestinians because we want to keep it Jewish, and we don't want Palestinians to live amongst us, and we want to keep it purely Jewish. So I think that's a first thing to realize about the reality that's facing people like myself, that we cannot live wherever we want. We cannot simply move and live in any city that we desire. We are limited in terms of where we can live. So that's in terms of the majority or predominantly 100% Jewish cities. But let's talk about the mixed cities. You also have, this specific post that you see in front of you was, an advertisement or an ad that was put by the political party of the current Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, which it says it's called the Jewish Home, and basically it says only a strong Jewish home will keep Ramle Jewish. And you can see here a woman, and it says tomorrow in Hebrew above in the red area, it says tomorrow this could be your daughter. And then you see the Shabbat dinner behind, and obviously the Western-looking woman dressed in Muslim clothing. And Ramle, which is next to Lid, the Israeli mayor of Lod, Yair Aviva, also said violence is part of the Arab culture, adding that he will work on deporting the families of criminals. And the way that criminals are characterized and people that are called criminals and the context in which criminals are now being, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in the police brutality. And if people also always talk about the wall between Bethlehem and Jerusalem and across the other places in the West Bank, but there's also a wall within Lid itself, in Lod. There's a wall that separates the Palestinian and the Jewish neighborhoods. So I think if you enter the Arab neighborhoods and you compare them to the Jewish ones in Lod or Lid, it would be very difficult not to recognize the difference and the marginalization of the Arab area. So I think this is a dynamic that faces the Palestinians that live in the mixed cities like Jaffa, Haifa, Lid, Ramle, etc. And also, I'll talk about it a little bit, but in May, they again declared the area as a military restricted area when there was a lot of violence happening in Lid. And then I want to talk about also in the south of Israel, in the Nakab, in Hebrew, the Negev, the Bedouin community, which is probably the most vulnerable citizens who are really left in a way alone. And there are around 70 Bedouin families, around 1,000 people who are facing forced eviction after a ruling of the Israeli Supreme Court in 2002, which is to remove the village and to build a Jewish town called Hiran in in the area that they're living. And I think it's important to note that this is the second time that the Bedouins are being displaced. In 1956, they were moved to this area, and this is the second time they're moving them. They're saying that we want to urbanize them, we want to move them into the cities. But it's important to remember that this is also, it disregards the way of life that Bedouin communities have. And also the Bedouins have been living there for many, many years, and Israel says they don't have any documents, but that's not the way that many Bedouins and many Middle Easterners understand the land and the way people treat the land in terms of its ownership. So again, a very, very difficult situation that they're facing, and unfortunately, they are currently, as we speak, being evicted from their homes. And I haven't included necessarily what is happening also in Jerusalem with Sheikh Jarrah, Silwan, and the Mount of Olives, and different areas as well. So this is, underlying strategy and policy that is presented by the state of Israel.